Today, we are going to study the Bourbon family. Their legacy began in the 13th century, intertwined with the rise of European monarchies. Known for their influence in France, they navigated revolutions and restorations, embodying the complexities of power. Beyond politics, their name graces fine spirits, particularly bourbon whiskey, a testament to their lasting impact on culture. Each bottle tells a story of craftsmanship, tradition, and the spirit of a family that shaped nations. The Bourbon family traces its origins to Robert of Clermont, 1256 to 1318, the sixth son of Louis IX of France. As a cadet branch of the Capet dynasty, the Bourbons gradually expanded their influence through strategic marriages, accumulating vast territories and securing high-ranking positions in both the government and the church. This method of expansion allowed them to become one of the most powerful noble families in France by the late Middle Ages. During the 1400s, the Bourbons' increasing power placed them in direct competition with the French crown. In 1461, Jean II, Duke of Bourbon, 1426 to 1488, found himself accused of treason for supporting a revolt against King Charles VII. However, the newly crowned Louis XI sought to mend relations with the family, and not only released Jean, but also appointed him as the commander of the royal army. This act ensured the Bourbons' continued loyalty during Louis XI's reign and reaffirmed their importance within the French aristocracy. The Bourbon family faced a significant crisis in 1521 when Louise of Savoy, mother of King Francis I, attempted to seize some of their lands. This led Charles III, Duke of Bourbon, 1489 to 1524, to ally with the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V against Francis. The emperor's forces successfully captured the French king in 1525, but Francis was released a year later and retaliated by confiscating the Bourbon lands. Following Charles III's death in 1524, Francis I declared him a traitor and permanently seized his properties, reducing the family's wealth and political influence. Despite this setback, the Bourbon family managed to regain favor through Charles, Duke of Vendôme, 1489 to 1537, the younger brother of Charles III. Unlike his brother, Charles of Vendôme remained loyal to Francis I and was rewarded with the position of the family head. His marriage to Françoise d'Alençon, Francis I's sister-in-law, further strengthened the family's political connections. Their son, Antoine de Bourbon, 1518 to 1562, wed Jeanne d'Albret, the Queen of Navarre, thereby extending Bourbon influence over central and southwestern France. The Bourbon family became entangled in the French Wars of Religion, which began after the death of Henry II in 1559. Antoine de Bourbon and his son, Henry of Navarre, 1553 to 1610, sided with the Protestant Huguenots, followers of John Calvin, in their struggle against the Catholic monarchy. Henry of Navarre's marriage to Margaret of Valois, the daughter of Henry II, in 1572, was intended to reconcile the two religious factions, but instead ignited the infamous St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Thousands of Huguenots were killed in the violence, and Henry was forced to convert to Catholicism to save his life. Held captive for 4 years, Henry escaped in 1576 and reaffirmed his Protestant faith. After a prolonged struggle for power, he ascended the French throne in 1589 as Henry IV, the first Bourbon king. However, his claim was contested by the Catholic Holy League, which backed his uncle Charles, Cardinal of Bourbon. To secure his reign and bring peace to a war-torn France, Henry converted to Catholicism in 1593, famously declaring, "Paris is well worth a mass." He implemented policies aimed at reconciling the divided nation. He issued the Edict of Nantes in 1598, granting religious toleration to Protestants, and brokered peace with Spain, bringing stability to France after decades of religious warfare. Henry IV's marriage to Margaret of Valois was annulled in 1599, allowing him to marry Marie de Médicis. Their son, Louis XIII, succeeded him in 1610 after Henry IV's assassination. Louis XIII, guided by his powerful minister, Cardinal Richelieu, further strengthened the monarchy, laying the foundation for absolute rule. His policies set the stage for the reign of his son, Louis XIV, who would establish France as Europe's dominant power. Under Louis XIV, 1643 to 1715, the Bourbon monarchy reached its zenith. Known as the Sun King, Louis XIV centralized royal authority, built the opulent Palace of Versailles, and expanded French territory through a series of wars. Louis XV's reign of 72 years is the longest recorded of any monarch in European history. He is famous for establishing absolute monarchy in France, centralizing power around himself, and making France the dominant power in Europe. Louis XIV adopted the symbol of the sun to represent his rule because 1. The sun is the center of the solar system, just as he saw himself as the center of France. 2. The sun provides light and life, and he wanted to be seen as the source of prosperity and power. 3. He promoted the idea that his authority was divinely ordained, absolute monarchy. He transformed France into Europe's dominant military and cultural power, expanded its territories through wars, and commissioned the construction of the Palace of Versailles, a symbol of royal grandeur. His patronage of the arts, literature, and architecture led to a flourishing of French culture, influencing Europe for generations. Despite his successes, Louis XIV faced criticism for his extravagant spending, which burdened the economy and increased taxation, sowing the seeds of future unrest. His rigid absolutist rule and disregard for financial crises contributed to the long-term instability that eventually led to the French Revolution in 1789. His revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685 led to religious persecution, forcing thousands of Huguenots to flee and harming France's economic and intellectual landscape. Maria Theresa of Spain was the wife of Louis XIV and Queen of France from 1660 until her death in 1683. Despite her royal status, she had little political influence, and her marriage was overshadowed by Louis XIV's numerous affairs. The Bourbon dynasty continued to rule France under Louis XV and Louis XVI, but by the late 18th century, financial crises and political unrest had weakened the monarchy. The extravagant spending of Louis XVI and his predecessors, combined with widespread social inequality, led to growing public dissatisfaction. The Enlightenment further challenged the legitimacy of absolute monarchy, inspiring revolutionary ideas. In 1789, the French Revolution erupted, marking the beginning of the end for Bourbon rule. By 1792, the monarchy was abolished, and Louis XVI was executed the following year. The fall of the Bourbons signaled a radical shift in France's political landscape, ushering in a republic that sought to dismantle the structures of royal power.